Hello, guys. Welcome to another edition of Pink Sock Podcast. We have Horror House in the house. I'm excited for this one. You ready, Gorak?
Yeah, dude, let's do this.
Let's do it to it. There he is. How you doing, Scott?
Good. How are you guys doing? Good
I'm
morning.
doing good. Do you prefer being called Scott, Horror House? How do you prefer to be called?
Scott. I'm just Scott. I'm just Scott Harris. No pretension. No stage names or anything like that. Just straight up Scott.
That's cool as fuck, dude. What made you? I know that this is something you've wanted to do, but
Yeah.
what made you decide to create an album of you fighting your sleep paralysis demon? And what made me want to listen to it while I slept?
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely has some sort of meditative sort of vibe about it. I don't know. I really like ambient music, and I've liked a lot of ambient music forever. Very into horror soundtracking, and I'm a big fan of black metal too, and depressive black metal, and the black ambient side of that. So I always wanted to do some sort of like electronic record. One of the last records that I did called what's it called again? I can't even remember my record names anymore. Evocation. That album, the last track there's a track called Aftermath, and it's completely ambient, and it takes the record out. So the Horror House stuff has always been very conceptual. But I wanted to build off that theme, which is that song's probably like a 6-minute song that has a sort of electronic ambient vibe about it. And I just kind of wanted to take a break from writing the usual music that I do for Horror House and kind of expand on that theme, because that theme is definitely something that's a part of the Horror House scene, sound and everything. And I just kind of like wanted to do something that would be completely ambient. And as a subject matter, I did have sleep paralysis for a bunch of years during my late teens, early 20s. And I thought it would be a good theme to use for the ambient record, something horror based, but something that I dealt with as well in life. And I kind of just started getting behind my machines and just writing this ambient record. There was no real, like format for it or anything like that. I just basically got behind my machines and started formatting and recording. And then just as far as the theme is concerned, I came up with a bunch of pieces of music. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tracks that's on this record. And then I just started titling them. And I just thought that it would be good to be able to break it down conceptually. So like the album starts off with like a clock. It's like ticking. And then like at the end of the album, it's ticking again. So like basically it's like it's going from being awake to being into different stages of sleep and then coming out of it. So like once you come out of it, you have Awakening, which is the last track. It's kind of like almost thematic, sort of beautiful sort of track where it's like you're kind of waking up, kind of reflecting in on whatever you went through the dream. I know you said something about in the review that you did last week about like, is the listener actually asleep for 42 minutes or whatever it may be? Not really. It's more like just kind of going in and out of stages of sleep. Definitely somebody could have been asleep for who knows how long, could be 6 hours or whatever it may be. But it's just, I don't know. I find when I sleep at times, for the times that I remember anything that I slept through and stuff like that, I kind of feel like that, like things go in waves where it's like, you kind of go up one point and then you might have, some sort of like, lucid dream or whatever. And then kind of like, then you go into deeper sleep and then it's kind of back and forth or whatever. So I kind of just try to set that to music. And as a theme, it just seemed like once I came up with it, I was crafting everything like musically, like with keyboards and stuff. Started layering But then when I got the theme together and I was like, okay, I think this is thematic and this is how I want to do it conceptually. Then I started adding other pieces to it, like vocals. There's a lot of like breathy things. It's like an experiment with reverb. There's a lot of reverb on the vocals. And I guess really when it came down to it, I mean, when I wrote it, it's like completely sobering. Like I didn't do this under any sort of like altered state or anything like that. Like, I mean, I do like to party and I have my substances that I like to use and I like to drink and stuff. But I saw like sort of more recreational, honestly. When I'm doing music, I try to, especially this horror house stuff, I just kind of keep trying to keep very sober about it. And so it's like honest. So I feel like that some of the altering can alter sort of the ideas and that, not that that's necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, you know, that sort of stuff breeds good ideas and interesting audio and interesting writing. But I'm always doing this stuff completely sober, like late at night, just up and just kind of grinding at it. So I just built it in pieces and then came up with the theme. And I think that I think it is sort of representative of battling the sleep paralysis demon. I just thought it was good thematically to use the sleep paralysis demon, La Pisadeira. I was reading about it online and kind of identified. I thought it was a good metaphor and representation of sleep paralysis, since it's in like history and folklore and stuff like that. This also has a little bit of a Spanish vibe about it because it's Spanish folklore. But yeah, so that's basically this album is just kind of going through what it would feel like to battle your demons in your sleep.
Bro,
it's kind of hard to be able to put something to sound when you're asleep. You know, it's like, oh, you remember a dream, or like, oh, I have this riff idea, I'm gonna like write this thing or whatever. But I feel like that with this album and with a lot of the stuff that I do with Horror House, kind of right off the top of my head. Like some things I do have like my phone, you know, handy, and I'm like singing into the phone, like here's a part or here's an idea or whatever. But definitely with the La Pisadeira record, it was just straight up off the top of my head, and I just got behind the machines and started creating. I'm like, I'm going to create a dark album. It's going to be ambient. I knew that, but like, let's see where I go with it. And just like, I started coming up with themes upon themes upon themes, and it just kind of all, like you said, Mike, you were talking about like how it's kind of like sounds like it's all one song. You know, it definitely is like that. It definitely fades in and fades out, but it definitely could be like one big, huge ambient piece that's 42 minutes long for sure.
It's beautiful, and I liked it because, like, my thought was, I've heard of people writing music about a dream they had, but I've never heard, and it might exist, I don't know, but I've never heard of anybody writing music based around them fighting a sleep paralysis demon. And when it comes to sleep paralysis, I don't know too much about it, but I do know, like with La Pisadeira, the folklore states that it's if you eat at night. Do you have these types of issues if you don't eat at night, or is that?
I mean, I had it between I was like 16 and 22 or 24 or something like that. I don't have them anymore. It's possible that it could be something that could be sugar related that brings it on. I wouldn't be surprised, you know. But I had a lot of bouts of lucid dreams, waking up and feeling like I can't move, that sort of thing. Really scary. Like you're kind of in between sleep, or you know, could be earlier, like when you're first falling asleep or when you're like waking up or whatever, of like that, like I can't move sort of thing, which is really scary. You definitely feel like, I felt like, you know, almost like it's like, is it alien abduction? Is it like just a mind fuck or something going on with your body where you feel like you can't move or whatever? It was definitely scary. And I've been in quite a few situations like that, in between waking up and then also, you know, just at that point of falling asleep and stuff like that. And I definitely have, I remember falling asleep and hearing like radio frequencies, like, you know, like astronomy domain or whatever. That's Floyd, what's it called? Piper at the Gates of Dawn, first track on there. And it's like a radio frequency of talking and stuff like that. definitely got that like sort of thing when I was starting to fall asleep at times, where I'm hearing like things, I'm kind of going in and out, and I'm kind of hearing weird sort of frequencies and stuff like that. So it's like I'm definitely going to incorporate that into this record for sure. So there is some of that going on. Like in the beginning, there's some talking and things like that that are like radio frequency that are really sort of almost incoherent, like ambient sort of things going on too. So yeah, I mean, the sleep paralysis thing, it definitely was a weird, scary thing. And I know a lot of people have dealt with it in life. And I don't know, I just felt like it was like a good way to exercise my demons with sleep paralysis. But it also felt like that I wanted to create something that was like really introspective and psychedelic and deep. And a lot of people, you know, it's not for everyone. I mean, the album is definitely weird and it's definitely dark. But if you like dark music, you probably would like it. You know, if you like black metal and you like things that are like I like things like Nort and Yaztor and, you know, Burzum's, you know, ambient stuff. You know, there's Sargeist. There's a lot of things that I like that are kind of like that sort of more ambient sort of things. Like, I don't know if you know the Sunno, the Black album.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite records. Like, that's dark records. Like, forget about genre. It's just dark and fucked up sounding. And you know,
I love that about Sunno.
Yeah,
Sunno's a great band if you're looking for fucked up music. And so is Hororhaus. I'll put you up there with them. Let's do that.
well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an influence on that record. That's one of my favorite dark records. So, you know, I listened to a lot of like stuff like that. That was kind of influenced what I was doing with this. Velvet Cocoon, I don't know if you know those guys, but they have an album called Genevieve, which the last track on their record is ambient, sort of similar to what I did with Evocation. Like the last track was an ambient track. And then they did a whole ambient album called Atropine, and they're a very drug oriented band. But it's dark and it's ambient. It's good to listen to, like if you want to get deep and introspective. And that's kind of like really, when it comes down to it, like what the whole La Pisadeira record really is. It's really kind of like, there's all these different layers going on there, but it's definitely nightmarish, but it's also very like meditative. And you could meditate to it. It might be really weird. It's almost like, yeah, I've been through like different stages of meditation in my life, and I've done it. I did it a bunch of times. I mean, I got very, very spiritual at one point in my life. But you know, this sort of thing where you're trying to go into white light and you're going through the darkness. That's kind of like what is going on here with La Pisadeira. It's kind of like getting through the darkness and going into the light.
And it's kind of weird to tell somebody, like, what are you meditating to? What music? Oh, you know, this record about a guy fighting his demons, pretty much. And that's pretty much what a sleep paralysis demon is. You're fighting your demons in your sleep.
Yep. So, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people get turned off by dealing with that sort of stuff. Maybe it's too real to them, or maybe it's like too outside their realm. They don't want to delve into it. But I did. And I mean, you know, creating the record itself, like I loved creating it. It was really fun for me. And it was very experimental. I'm definitely going to do another one, probably in 2024 after I do the next Hororhaus record. I will continue with ambient music. I would love to do, you know, sort of soundtrack stuff, like for movies or whatever. Like definitely.
You could.
Yeah, easy.
You really could. Like that whole album kind of sounded to me like a soundtrack to a horror movie. How you can even make your own horror movie about like a sleep paralysis demon or whatever you want to make it about. And the music is very much that. What is the next Hororhaus album going to be like?
The next one's going to be like the other stuff that I do, like Excommunication and Evocation, where there's going to be things that are going to be more dance oriented,
like Dark Wave.
Dark Wave, yeah. The next one's called Demise and Rise, and it's about basically about somebody that gets involved with the wrong people, but then comes back to haunt. So it's basically, that's the storyline there. But it's definitely introspective. Some of the music I wrote a while ago. There's a song that I do, Ghost Host, which became kind of really popular for me. And that song was written in 87, but I revamped it. I had a death rock project in 87 that I was doing called 13, like Roman numerals. And it didn't take off. I went back and started playing drums with people in the New York City scene and did that for many, many years. But I put that all on the back burner. And I wanted to do Horror House for a long time. I mean, it started in 2019, but I've been wanting to do it since the 90s for sure. Some sort of electronic dark music. But this album is definitely going to be more like that, like a more like dark wave record, definitely moving into different territory, I guess, with what I'm doing, updating what I'm doing and adding more elements to the pot, and just trying to move the sound forward. I do everything myself. It's like I'm just a single artist. I don't have anyone mixing my stuff. No one's really mastering. Although last record I had somebody else master it, Slasher Dave from Acid Witch. I don't know if you're a fan of Slasher Dave, but he's amazing. Amazing artist. And I love his electronic stuff too. And we formed a friendship online. And I had him master Excommunication. And he told me that he was like, he really likes what I do. And he told me that he's like, you don't really need me to master this for you. Like, I like your mastering. I think your mastering is good. And I was like, no, I think I want to have you do it because I wanted to try to get the electronic sound a little bit up to, the sound wars that are going on with electronic music now, But yeah, so the next record's going to be like that. And then after that, then I'm going to do another ambient record. I have an idea for I know exactly what I'm going to do for it. It's just a matter of getting the time to be able to do that. And I'm also doing collaborations with different people. I have different singers I'm working with. I have different people I'm working with for different projects and stuff like that. So definitely have some remixes and things like that too. So, and then I also have I'm promoting a night that's local that I'm doing that too. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting some, electronic dark wave and that sort of bands playing the nights that I have upstate in Woodstock and trying to make that happen.
Is that your Horrortaria stuff that you do through, what's the website that you work? Wax Audio, I think it is.
Oh, Wax Radio Indie. So it's funny because I've been sending my music out to DJs for a long time. And then the indie scene kind of picked up on what I was doing really, really early. And so I have good support from the Indiana scene. I mean, I have good support a lot of different cities, but definitely Indiana kind of adopted me and they like Ghost Host. They really like what I do, the electronic dark wave and death rock thing or whatever. And so one of the guys has a radio station there that's actually on FM radio, and he has a lot of dark wave DJs and people that are in the indie scene kind of play, and they have shows on his station. So we talked about doing something, and then I started this radio show about a year ago called Horrortaria, and I'd been doing some DJing on Twitch too. But Horrortaria basically is just the show itself that I do on Wax Radio is kind of just a hodgepodge of different types of dark music. Sometimes it'll be stuff that's new, that's happening in the dark wave scene. Some of it could be, from back in the 60s or the 50s or whatever. Sometimes it's, psychobilly, and sometimes it's death and black metal. Sometimes it's the Doors. Sometimes it's Velvet Underground, so I just mix it all up. It's just a dark show. Basically, if you like dark music, then, you might not learn something, but you might have something in common with it. And so the live shows, I have Horrortaria, and that's upstate. So I decided to do it live and started doing that early January of this year. And it's been going pretty well. We have Ghost Cop and Frenchie and the Punk playing on September 15th. And if you don't know those two bands, they're really, really great and cool. They're from the New York City area. And then we do a DJ thing also called Fuller Show, which is at Tinker Tavern in Woodstock. And we're doing the next one October 21st. And then back at Horrortaria at Avalon Lounge, which is in Catskill, where Horrortaria is, Lydia Lunch Retrovirus is playing. So we're really excited about that because Lydia Lunch is amazing and we love her. And actually the partner that I'm working with that DJs with me, Tommy, is very good friends with Lydia. So we've done some events with her in the past, and we're really excited about that. So that's what's going on with me.
That's crazy. You also have a new single that you're releasing, correct? I saw you post something about it.
Yeah, the next one is called Next Door Neighbor. It's really, really quirky, but it's a part of that same Ghost Host batch of music that I wrote back in '87. So I just basically updated it for Horror House. So it's similar to Ghost Host, because I mean, I had a bunch of songs in that time period. Just felt like I wanted to, go back to them and kind of release them eventually. And it was kind of an interesting challenge to bring it to the forefront or whatever, this old music that I had. But it's interesting though, because it seems like the stuff that I wrote back then has a lot of, sort of a connection to the new scene now, because like a lot of the trad goths and the people that are into that scene like stuff from the 80s. I mean, that's really where it came from, So like, I don't know, I wrote it in the 80s, so maybe that's why Ghost Host is, kind of like popular. So I decided to do Next Door Neighbor, which is the next song. And it's weird, but it's typical Horror House. It's definitely in that style. It's a part of the storyline of Demise and Rise. It's basically about, it's tongue in cheek. It's definitely about somebody that lives in an apartment and hears something going on next door and is trying to figure out what's going on. And basically the question is, are they satanic? And the answer is yes. But but it's about that person discovering, because the whole theme of the album is that it's somebody that gets involved with the wrong people. So
with your ideas, you should start making shows and movies, bro.
I need people to do that. I can't do it all myself. I need a filmmaker. Anybody out there that wants to, do some horror shorts,
let's do it.
It is Halloween,
If you need any actors, me and Gorak will gladly do it. It'll cost a lot to get Gorak from Australia, but
it'll be worth it.
He's a good actor. He makes a really good Dwayne The Rock Johnson stunt double.
Oh, cool. I like your shirt, by the way.
Death Angel? Yeah, big fan.
Nice.
Big fan. Yeah. I met them a couple of years ago. They're really cool dudes.
So you're into horror. Do you like independent horror films?
I do. I kind of gravitate towards things of my childhood from the 70s and 80s and older stuff. I'm a big fan of like silent horror, Lon Chaney, and things like Nosferatu is like my favorite horror movie of all time, 1922. And the Hammer horror stuff, I like 50s horror. But new stuff, I mean, like I'm kind of like, I have Shudder, and I try to kind of get into what's going on there, but there's just, it's almost like music too. It's like, there's so much out there. And it's crazy because it's just an overabundance of art that's out there, which is great. I mean, like now, because of the internet, everything's kind of more widespread, where, back in the day, you'd have to find the movie or you'd have to find the band. Someone would have to introduce you to it. You'd have to tape trade or whatever. Now you can just go online and dig. And they have these great channels like Shudder that have so much stuff on it. And then you have Amazon Prime and the whole streaming platforms. It's crazy. To me. So it's hard. I kind of come out of my bubble every once in a while to watch something new. Like Terrifier, I like. I mean, that's a big
same.
Ever. I have Terrifier, and the 1 and 2 I have on Blu-ray or whatever, I saw them or whatever. And those are pretty interesting movies. But I don't know. I'm really not really huge into new stuff, like I definitely feel like more attached to my childhood, and I often rewatch stuff that I've seen a million times. It's like comfort food or whatever. It's like there's no different to me than watching Gargoyles or Don't Be Afraid of the Dark as I would be watching Three's Company or Charlie's Angels or like The Love Boat or something stupid like that. Like it's part of my childhood, it's like, I mean, Top Cat, I mean, like cartoons. I mean, like I watch like a lot of old stuff, and I have a pretty big DVD collection, Blu-ray collection, kind of go that direction. And every once in a while I'll be streaming something, but I don't know. I mean, I kind of go like as far as like, it's almost like movies in general, like somewhere, I think probably around 2004 or 5. I used to go to like movies all the time, like every new release or whatever. But now it's like, so, I mean, even though they have like movie theaters that are like, you can go to a Googleplex and there's like 15 theaters or whatever. Even back in like the 70s and the 80s and stuff, there wasn't as much filmmaking as it is now. I mean, it's so exploded. So it's kind of hard to keep up. So I don't know. It's hard. Like, I mean, like I probably am more into like new music than I am into new film. Just because like I don't know, some of it's too CGI, and I mean like some of the stuff too is I mean like I'd rather The Exorcist, you know what I'm saying? Like something like that. Like to me, like that to me is horrifying, like things like that and Hellraiser and stuff like that. Like I don't know, like stuff that's like too, like I said, like too like super realistic. Like I don't know if I'm really into the super realistic stuff. I like more stuff that's I like slasher films, but I'm definitely more into like monster movies and things that are supernatural.
If you're into not realistic movies, Gorak has a whole collection for you. We recently reacted to and talked about several fucked up B-rated films. One of them being Velocipaster.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's about this guy who is a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he gets angry, he turns into a velociraptor and fights ninjas.
Oh,
very B-rated.
It's very B-rated, very horrible. You should watch it.
And I'm pretty sure there's going to be a sequel as well. So
what the fuck?
I'm not joking. There will be a sequel.
Speaking of sequels, there's also one, bro, that you should watch. It's called The Evil Bong.
Okay.
It spawned like 7 or 8 sequels. It's by the same guy that made Puppet Master, if you remember that.
Yeah, I know Puppet Master. Sure.
This one's about this bong that comes to life, and after you smoke it, and it captures your soul into a stripper realm inside of the bong and tries to kill you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty serious.
It's very serious. You could write a whole album about that.
That's streaming.
Say that.
Do you have to buy that stuff? Is that like all like DVD only?
You can buy it on. You can get it on streaming. There's some free streaming platforms that have it. I forget which ones.
Mm-hmm.
Tubi, I think.
Tubi has it.
Oh, Tubi, yeah, cool.
Tubi has everything crazy and B-rated.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, send me a list.
I will. Send me a list of all the musicians, bro. You got.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like it's interesting. There's a really good new dark wave scene happening across the world now. It's really cool. They're really, really great bands. They're all self-produced, most of them, and they're starting to do really well, and the scene's starting to explode. I'm waiting for the day that all of a sudden the labels are going to start sniffing around and going, oh yeah, shit, we got to do something with the scene, because I think it's starting to get to that point where some of these bands are starting to blow up a bit, so it's interesting. I mean, there's things like on the bigger realm of that scene, like Boy Harsher, they're huge, very big, and Drab Majesty, they're getting big. Actors are getting big. So there's Twin Tribes are getting big. These are all derivative bands, but they do something different in the scene, like they've kind of updated the dark wave sound or dance sort of sound or goth or whatever you want to call it. So there's definitely like an interesting scene, and you can go down the rabbit hole too with like all these bands, and it's just like it's overwhelming really when it comes down to it, like on a DJ level, trying to go through all the bands and all the different sounds and stuff. And there's some stuff that all sounds the same, and there's stuff that kind of stands out, like anything, like I'm a huge metal fan, and I like Black and Death, and there's some great bands that are in the scene that are new, and then there's some that are just, they all sound great and production is great and everything, but a lot of it's kind of like just well produced, and it's like that's it. There's like nothing necessarily amazing about what they're doing. You know what I mean? It's just that the production's all great and all up to snuff or whatever. I've always liked stuff that was a little bit more raw. I do like a lot of produced stuff though, for sure. Certain production, but
there's also musicians that leave other bands and then start a band trying to feed off the fame of the band they left.
Sure.
like there's a band that I've been listening to on and off that left a very famous metal group. I'm not really going to call them out or nothing, but they're in a really big metal group. And then they decide to form a separate metal group with a similar name, but with like none of the members of the original group, just him.
Yeah.
And they literally just sound like the band he left.
Right.
And I'm like, I get it, that's your playing style, but like at least find a vocalist that doesn't sound like the original vocalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or wasn't in a tribute band for that original vocalist.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it goes all across the board too. I mean, like, you know, I don't know. I mean, like, you know, even big bands that are playing now that, you know, everyone, you know, music of the 60s and the 70s I grew up on, you know, it's completely dying out because of their age and stuff. You know, it's like how much more, you know, everyone's doing a farewell tour, you know, at this point. But you know, what do you do beyond that? You know, if you want to keep going, or if you are an established artist, you know, what do you do once you leave that band? You know, it's like you're a solo artist, or do you call it like something else that's similar to what everyone identifies with, you know, because you have to make a living, and you try to figure, you know, as an artist, you're trying to make probably, you know, I don't know. It's like you make the sacrifice of leaving a band, and now you're not going to make that money anymore. You built something up big, you know, and then you become a solo artist, and then you're not called the solo artist. You're called that band, you know, there's lots of them, you know,
like, for instance, like the singer's name of and the band name.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's like, you know, they can't draw. I mean, it's just basically they can't necessarily draw just on their name. If people like, oh, of, you know, Jeff Tate of Queensryche. I mean, it's like, you know, and, you know,
that's like
I'm not saying that they shouldn't be doing that either. I mean, if that's what they want to do or whatever, but yeah, it would be nice to be, you know, people spend their careers on their climb, and then once they're up on the climb and then something happens where they have a falling out with the band. I mean, like, you know, but there are solo artists that were in bands that were really well known, and just they go out and they just go and do their thing, and they are able to build enough, I guess, movement to be able to keep going and making enough money.
Like Ozzy Osbourne, Eric Clapton, like artists like that made a name for themselves,
sure,
as well as the bands they've been in, which that is hard to do.
Of course.
Leave an established band, especially for like Ozzy and shit. You leave a band like Black Sabbath,
yeah,
at the height of their game.
No, for sure. And I mean, luckily I mean, I'm a huge Sabbath fan. I'm a huge Ozzy fan, especially your early albums, you know, the early solo Ozzy stuff, you know, Blizzard and Diary. I love those records. Hold on. Sorry, my phone's going off. That's my phone. That's my phone. You know, yeah, but you know, a lot of time, I mean, with Ozzy, he had Sharon, luckily, you know, to be able to help, you know, boost his career and get him to where he needed to go or whatever. So it's not, you know, you have to have the machine behind you when you're someone like that too. You know, I think that helps, like having that machine behind you. Like, we're going to still, you know, the label picks you up and says, we're going to still work with you, and we're going to actually do something for you. You know, you got to have that behind you. Like as just like as a DIY, you know, it's very hard to be able to do something like that and just all of a sudden break off from some like huge band and then just like, oh, I'm just going to go do this. I mean, look at people like, look at Peter Criss. Like, I'm a huge Kiss fan. What happened with Peter Criss? I mean, like, you know, Ace went off and did stuff too, you know, but they didn't, you know, and Ace had some you know, popularity and he did okay, you know, but like you not the notoriety and stardom that you had in Kiss, you know. So I mean, I kind of feel like that with a lot of people. I mean, look at Sebastian Bach. Love Sebastian Bach, but you know, everyone wants to see him with Skid Row, even though he's doing.
That won't happen.
And who knows? I mean, like, they don't get along. But you know, I mean, and I love Sebastian. I think he's great, you know, and I you know, I think he's a great vocalist, and I've seen him solo and saw him in Jekyll and Hyde on Broadway and stuff. But you know, it's hard. It's hard to break off from bands that had top records And then all of a sudden you're just,
because a lot of these people have amazing solo records.
Absolutely.
That's like Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. He just released a thrash metal album, but you didn't hear much about it.
Right.
People are like, oh, Dee Snider of Twisted Sister released an album. Why not just Dee Snider released an album?
Right. Yeah, because it just goes hand in hand. It's like trying to explain to somebody, hey, by the way, it's this person of that band or whatever, because otherwise maybe they don't necessarily know or whatever. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. There's a lot of different styles of music where that happens or whatever, where someone's breaking off. But I definitely think that in part it has to do with the A&R of what happened in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where, you know, labels were kind of artist developing artists anyway, and they you know, if someone left or whatever, they would, you know, you have that leaving member clause in your contract, and they're gonna get developed, you know. You know, labels, I mean, I work for a major label during the day, like this is my day job, right? But like, and no disrespect to the labels, but like the labels are not signing rock anymore, you know, and they haven't for years. They're signing, you know, it's hip hop and it's pop and it's dance music, really. So it's, you know, that's the contemporary music that's happening, you know, back in when we were growing up, when I was growing up in the 70s and the 80s and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, you know, you watch MTV and it would be Iron Maiden, Duran Duran, and Michael Jackson. I mean, you had like all this like hodgepodge of pop music that just kind of fit all together or whatever. And the labels were promoting a lot of things, you know, hip hop was coming up, Run DMC and things. So there was all this sort of stuff that was happening where labels were kind of, you know, supporting different types of music, and that they're not doing that anymore. So like the rock bands, I mean, there are some rock bands that are signed to major labels, but not many. I mean, like the new bands that I like that are signed, I love Inhaler, and Inhaler is Elijah Houston who's Bono's son. He's got a band called Inhaler, and they're like on Polydor, and they're great. They're amazing live. Their music's great. Vocals are off the charts. Sounds a lot like his dad, but they're great. But that's just one band. Like there's not like a whole slew of old, you know, like all of a sudden there's this like rock scene that like, oh, the labels are jumping on and like promoting that. So that's not there anymore. So it's all independent, and it's like even metal, like there's some I mean, like look at what happened with metal in the 80s, and then even with like death metal, like Roadrunner jumped up on death metal. Oh yeah, this is the next thing or whatever. They're always trying to get what's the next thing to promote, you know. So all those bands ended up going underground, you know. I mean, they were where they were. Some of them came up, you know, some of them sold a lot of records, Cannibal Corpse and Obituary, and you know, a lot of bands like that, you know, that were, you know, on that like climb, you know. But you have all this stuff now that it's like, if you don't follow, you know, pop trends and you're looking for rock or you're looking for metal, it's not there. So you have to go and dig. You have to find the labels that are producing it, that are the underground labels or whatever, Relapse. And, you know, there's so many of them or whatever that put out some great, amazing records, and follow them, you know, like the way metal fans used to follow Metal Blade or any of those labels that were in the 80s, like, you know, or like I love SST, you know, for like Black Flag and Minutemen and all that stuff, you know, that, or Sub Pop or whatever, you know, all those like indie labels, like they have their like roster of bands, you know, and it's like that's how it is. So you have to look there, and you have to think,
because there's no advertising much anymore, like you said, because I'm a big fan of like all kinds of different music, obviously, but like I just realized not too long ago that a band that I love, Avatar, they're relatively big. They just released a new album. I saw nothing advertised about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it seems like what is advertised, like you said, is like mostly pop and legendary bands.
Right.
Like older rock bands. Like Greta Van Fleet released a new album. I didn't know that until I found it.
Right.
And they're signed to a relatively bigger label. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the marketing has changed. So it's like really the only marketing there is in a way is social media. So you have to like have the machine behind you and you know, beat the algorithm and pay for the ads and all that other stuff, or have people that are working for you in your marketing team that know how to break that and get into the right scene for whatever music you're deciding to promote or whatever. Like, you know, you have, you know, things like Dua Lipa, and, you know, you got, you know, millions and millions and millions of followers, you know, Beyonce, the pop music, dance music or whatever, that are like these divas, and this is what they're promoting, and that's what's there, and that's all great. I like that stuff too. I love pop music too. So I like a lot of things. I don't hate Dua Lipa at all. I like Dua Lipa actually, but it's just a different scene. And so like that stuff is just not being promoted, and it's just not like that. So, you know, I think a lot of the labels don't necessarily have the money to be able to promote it the way they actually want to explode it out. But, you know, it's like, it's if you're in the know, you start following certain pages, then you get to know about stuff, you know, like when the internet started exploding or whatever, I was like onto Metal Archives, and Metal Archives, like if you know about Metal Archives, which is like basically like you could research any metal band and it's there. And you can dig and you can read reviews, and that's how you learn. And a lot of metal fans in the early 2000s were getting into that and even having it on their phone at shows, like reading up on stuff or whatever. It's like, you know, you want to get the education, but like there's not a lot of that going on for other types of music now. So how do you learn about darkwave? I mean, it's like, just say, you know, how do you learn about that stuff? You have to go to Spotify and put in a band and then go other bands that are like this or whatever. And then you start, and I know there's the problem with Spotify and artists not getting paid what they should get paid and all that other stuff. But as far as promotion's concerned, it does open up doors for other artists and for you to learn about them. And if you love them, you should support them. Buy their shirts, their merch, their CDs, go and do it. You know, spend some money if you really do love that artist. That's what I do. I mean, like, I listen to a lot of stuff electronically for sure, but if I love the artist, I buy the vinyl, I buy the shirt or whatever, you know, like I will, if I really do love the artist, I buy the vinyl, if the vinyl's available, for sure.
The heartbreaking thing is when you find a band that you like that you never heard of before and then realize they just recently broke up.
Yeah. No, for sure. For
like,
sure.
But like another reason why there's not a whole lot of promotion that you see is because look at modern society as well. We don't listen to the radio really. We don't watch TV anymore. We don't have like Headbangers Ball or anything.
No, because everything's on demand now. So it's like that's the thing. It's just that like you can call and it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, you can call up what you want anytime you want, and that's great. Technology is great with that. Communication's great with that. All that stuff. But as far as like breaking yourself as an artist is concerned, I mean, like back in the day, like I wouldn't be able to get Hororhaus out there. I'd be doing a demo and like be like, oh, can I get booked or try to get a label to put it out or whatever, you know? And that's like back then was virtually impossible. I mean, unless you're like up on the next wave of what's going on, you know, like if you're doing something different or weird or whatever, you wouldn't get signed, you know. And there were so many great underground acts that even like, for instance, like I'm trying to think of a couple instances, like Pentagram. Like I don't know if you like Pentagram at all, like, you know, stoner thing or whatever, right?
Love stoner stuff. Look at me.
Yeah. You know, like Pentagram, like, you know, they were not very popular, but they're very influential. St. Vitus too, like huge underground SST, influential on so many bands, right? But like they weren't big bands, and like you didn't know about them unless you were like, you know, you followed certain circles and stuff like that, right? You would get into it somehow. So I guess now it's still similar to where, you know, you have to find out about it somehow. But, you know, back in the day, you turn on Channel 9 or whatever, and they'd have a Kiss commercial for the new record. Like, that's not happening anymore. There's none of that. Billboards are not as much happening, only in major cities. You might see, you know, something for a movie. Like my friend, one of my best friends lives in New York City, and go hang out with her all the time. And she had something up on her social media, like, oh, I'm definitely going to this. And it was like in Times Square, a big advertisement for the new Exorcist movie. You know, and it's like, you know, with video and everything and stuff like that. You'll see that for movies, but you won't see it for music often. Like maybe you go to LA and there'll be stuff there, you know, for billboards and stuff. So, you know, there's bands that I like I don't know if you know Death Valley Girls. I love them, and they're you know, LA, and they have billboards and stuff. Like, you know, their labels are doing stuff. It's a really cool label. But you know, for the majority of music or whatever, you don't even see that anymore. You know, it's rare. I mean, like in New York City, you'll see a billboard for the Beyonce concert that's coming, you know, or Taylor Swift, you know. They're doing that because they have the money. They have the promotion. They're making, you know, those concerts are making, you know, Metallica or whatever, you know, the big arena bands that are arena bands, you know, you'll see advertisement for Eagles, you know, Kiss, bands that are like doing their farewell, so Stones, you know, all that stuff. You'll see promotion for that because the money's there. But you're not going to see it for newer bands. They're not going to so much break that. It's just definitely more of like a social media thing, and then go out and play live and try to, you know, get your following and stuff. So
isn't it weird though that like when you label arena bands, you're like, oh, like the Rolling Stones, Beyonce, Metallica. Like Metallica is an arena band, but it's kind of still to this day weird to say that as a metal band, because metal for the longest time would never be allowed in a fucking stadium.
I know, for sure. No, I know. And I mean, I saw like Clash of the Titans in 91, and that was like Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, and Alice in Chains. And, you know, that was probably one of the first like big arena, like, you know, metal shows that were starting to happen like in the US, I think. I mean, definitely other, you know, in the 80s, it was all like, you know, theaters and stuff. Like I remember seeing Megadeth and on P-Cells, and, you know, there's small clubs or whatever, you know. Metallica weren't huge until, you know, they started doing the Black Album. They toured with, I mean, they started playing bigger places for sure, like with Cliff and stuff. Like they started getting bigger or whatever. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I went to see Metallica open for Guns N' Roses at Giant Stadium at the time, and now it's MetLife, but it was Giant Stadium then. And I went backstage to that party, and because I was friends with Ryan from Alice Cooper Band, and me and Ryan and Stefan used to play together in Emperor's New Clothes. And so we went backstage for that show because Ryan's friends with Gilby and was in a band with Gilby. So went backstage, and, you know, James and Lars had a party. The Metallica guys had a party in basically like a lunchroom with like beer and pizza. Guns N' Roses had this like crazy $60,000 a night party and top shelf alcohol, and like you can get any food you want, sushi, like steak, you know, prime, you know, they had cutting board stations, and it's crazy. But Lars and James were hanging out at the Guns N' Roses party. You know, they want to be rock stars. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's what they wanted to do. That's what Metallica wanted to do, and that's what happened with the Black Album. They're like, we want to become more contemporary.
That was a weird tour, though. That was after the Black Album, and Guns N' Roses headlined.
Yeah,
that was a really weird tour. Wasn't that the same tour that James burnt himself not long after you saw him, and they had like a riot?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was like during the Fade to Black. He was standing in the wrong part of the stage, and there was like flash pots or something.
Yeah, he got burnt, and Axl Rose was like 30 minutes late or something to begin with, and he left.
Yeah, so they relied on Guns N' Roses to save the day, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, that happened a lot back then.
I think that happened in Canada. I think I'm not too sure.
I thought it was in the States.
Oh. Might have seen that. I don't really remember where about it was, but I remember seeing the VH1 documentary or whatever it was. But yeah,
it's interesting though. There's definitely, you know, a really great underground scene happening with Darkwave, and it's also happening in the metal scene. It had been happening in the metal scene for forever. There's always been a great underground scene happening. And there's great new things to explore and experience, and things that that's what happened in 2003. I mean, like, I have been a metal fan forever, along with all different other genres. But 2003, I started going down that rabbit hole because Metal Archives started opening up and started digging into extreme music, and just kind of bored with stuff that was normal. And I didn't want to listen to things that were like normal sounding anymore. Like I was I've always listened to stuff that was avant-garde and weird, but like I just kind of like, it was so much, I think, more out of the mainstream of like all the hard rock stuff that was happening at the time, or new metal and stuff like that was happening. Like, not that I necessarily think it was bad or anything. I have my opinions about it. I don't want to dog anybody really. But Limp Bizkit and Korn and stuff like that, like it's like, I like Korn too, but it's just like, I was just like, this is not weird enough. I want to hear something strange. And then so I started digging into black metal and death metal, and especially black metal. I mean, death metal is rooted in Slayer and things in a way. But, black metal is definitely rooted in other weirdness. And so I, started listening to subgenres and just trying to dig. And there's just been always like, there's so much, I don't know, like there's so many bands to research. I mean, like I'm a huge black and death metal fan, and I'm still researching. I mean, it's like 20 years now that I've been into it, like really deep into it. So like that's
so many new bands too.
Huh?
There's so many new bands coming out too. Like you're trying to catch up from the old bands, and you're like, "Fuck, I'm still."
Yeah, I mean, Metal Archives is great because like you can go and research a band and research all the reviews, but then it'll tell you bands that sound like that too. Like if you not that if you like this band, they're like, these are other bands that are similar. So if you were like, I don't know, you were like starting to get into extreme metal, and you're like, you don't know, and you're like, someone's a gateway to you to get into that music. Morbid Angel, for instance. Mm-hmm. I mean, like you're gonna see a bunch of bands that sound like Morbid Angel there. You're gonna be like, oh, this band and that band and this other band or whatever, and then you start getting into, the not the big four like it is in thrash, but the big bands of that time period that influenced what came after.
So why does thrash metal the only genre that has a big four?
Yeah,
like why can't we have that with other genres? Like the big four.
That'd be cool.
The big four of darkwave, the big four of grunge, the big four. But the thing is, though, is a lot of people disagree with that big four.
Oh, I know, for sure. There's other great bands that were a part of the thrash scene that are not considered that. I just think it's like the ones that became most popular.
I think if you're going to
Exodus should have been up there.
If you're going to put anybody on the big four, Venom
and Death Angel.
Because Venom is one of those bands that influenced everyone in the big four.
For sure.
They're black metal, but they influence Slayer, they influence Metallica, they influence. And what else is weird about the big four you look at is they've all had at least one member that was in each band.
Right.
Megadeth was in Metallica. Kirk Hammett was in Exodus.
Right.
Well, not Exodus. He was in
he
was one album.
They're not part of the big four though. But Kirk was in.
They should have.
They should be. It was an Exodus. Like they all traded members. They're kind of like the punk scene. They're like they all traded members.
I think a lot of them were friendly back in the day. I mean, like it was like they were like them against the world. I mean, they were all into like I hung out in the crossover scene too. Like I started going to clubs 85, 86 in the city, and I saw a lot of those Rock Hotel Ritz shows. All those hardcore bands that came through that influenced a lot of the stuff that ended up being crossover, I guess you could say that Metallica and Slayer and stuff like that were kind of crossover bands. I mean, they were all into like, definitely Slayer were into things like Minor Threat and, whatever Exploited and GBH and the Misfits and things like that, so there's definitely like that influence there for sure.
And they were very black metal too, in a way.
Who?
Slayer. They had kind of like black metal themes.
Definitely in the early days, yeah. Hell Awaits and that earlier period, definitely. Show No Mercy. But Show No Mercy definitely has a little bit of like Kerry was a big Priest fan. So it definitely has a new wave of British heavy metal thing happening on Show No Mercy for sure. That album has they didn't start really morphing into that until like Hell Awaits, and Hell Awaits to kind of define the classic Slayer sound. That was also because what's his name? Why am I blanking or whatever? The other guitar player, Hammett or whatever. He was into like all the punk stuff or whatever. So that's when they started playing faster, you know, because they were into like Jeff Hanneman. I'm like I'm blanking. Jeff Hanneman. I mean, he was like he brought in all that stuff and like he was like into skate punk and stuff. So like I think that like kind of influenced where they went. Definitely into Venom and Bathory too, for sure. There's definitely that influence too. That was like more underground and stuff. But yeah, I mean, like Slayer I love Slayer. I saw them many times in the 80s and through, you know, Dave Lombardo coming back and stuff. Probably my favorite.
Gary Holt. I love Gary Holt as a replacement guitarist for Jeff. I think that was a good choice.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great.
Yeah.
An incredible guitarist. But buddy, it is getting kind of late into the podcast. I was going to give you a chance to promote more of your stuff that you have going on, your website, everything you want to promote.
Okay.
Let's get it all out of the way. I'm going to bring you up on the screen.
Okay. Hey guys. So basically I'm on Instagram. You can find it horrorhouse_official. That's probably where I'm getting most of my hits and everything. I'm also on Facebook under Horror House as well. Scott Harris, you can follow me on Facebook. Basically, Facebook and Instagram are the biggest things. I have Mixcloud too, so all the radio shows that I do that are on Friday on waxradioindie.com are archived there every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you go to Mixcloud and you go to Horror House, you'll see all my shows. I have like something like 60-something shows that are there right now and other sort of DJ things, so you can check that out. What else am I doing too? I am on Twitch, but I don't Twitch DJ all the time anymore. But it is horrorhouse_official as well. And that's about it. So also Bandcamp too. I mean, I have my music at Bandcamp and all the Horror House music, including La Pisadeira, I have that album right here, is on all different sort of streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music. You can go there for it. Wherever, you know, streaming platform that you use, Horror House is there. And you can go to Bandcamp too, and you can buy product there. So you can buy CDs, you can buy shirts, and all that good stuff.
That's awesome, brother. And that is Horror House, like listed below, not Whorehouse.
Nope, it's it's horror. Okay, so it's like Horror House. So HOROHAUS. It's kind of German/German. House is German for house. Horror in some German circles is a different spelling for horror. Sort of like a kid wrote it, but it's like a black metal sort of like font. So
I love it. I need to get me a copy of that. I love that album.
I'll send it to you guys.
Okay, I'll send you my address. But that was Scott Harris of Horror House. We do have an announcement for next week's podcast. We have a guest. Do you want to sit in anticipation while we announce our guest?
Sure.
Our guest for next week's episode, actually Friday's episode, we're actually going to be doing a special live for this. We have Gary Peterson of the Guess Who. Very awesome. Very cool individual from what I have found. They actually have a new album out. That's another legendary rock band that I didn't realize had a new album out, so I listened to it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, quite excited for that one. It's been a blast talking to you, Scott. I'd love to have you back on, talk horror more, dig more into the deep realm of nightmares and all that shit, and even new music that you have coming out.
For sure.
I would love to have you back on. You're a blast to talk to. And everyone, as always, live long, rock hard.
Yeah.